Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I got a story for you. This goes way back to like 2005. There was a guy that my next door neighbor knew, and my next door neighbor, he was into meth. The guy across the alley, and the kid across the alley, and there was this one guy that he knew, and he had money, and his name was Peter. And eventually my neighbor introduced him to me, and so I didn't know what to think of this guy. And if you're watching this video, you gotta watch this video to the end, because this story is so unbelievable to tell you how it is to be a meth dealer and how risky it is. That it should blow your mind. But anyways, he kept coming in the bike shop, and I'd sell him a little bit at a time, quarter paper, half gram, and he was just too big of a dope fiend to really worry about, because you always thought that he's just gonna, whatever you give him, he's gonna smoke it up. So he kept coming around. I wouldn't sell him any more than a half gram, and because basically whatever I'd sell him, he would smoke almost all of it right there with me, because he was such a dope fiend, and he had an endless amount of money. Got to learn more about him, and it turns out that his grandpa and his dad, they've been in the roofing business, the shingle business, for like 60, 70 years. And what that means basically is they can get shingles cheaper than anybody else, because they've built up sales levels and stuff like that over the years. And they had a business in town where they were a shingle distributor, and Peter was one of the salesmen. And I don't know if he was a district salesman or what, or public relations, or I don't know what he was, but he had his own office, and he lived in a really fancy house. He had 4 boys. He had a really good looking wife, and he was a dope fiend like you would not believe. And I just kept selling him, more and more, and then the neighbor would sell him some, and he just couldn't get enough. He just loved meth. He couldn't get enough, and he also liked drinking a lot too. So in the original bike shop where I had, he was coming around a little bit, because the neighbor had his claws into him pretty good. So he was basically buying from the neighbor. I don't know what kind of deals he was giving him or what, but when his girlfriend that lived right next to me too, they shared a house with their grandpa who lived across the alley. Well, when they got in trouble, which I found out later that his wife was a snitch and snitched off some people, and they ended up moving to Colorado because everybody found out that they were snitches. So that left Peter high and dry. So Peter started coming around, and he still didn't trust him. But eventually I lost my house, and I rented out another house for my wife and 3 kids at the time. And he would come around, and I was selling him a little bit at a time, because he would smoke most of it with me, which was a good deal for me, because but I still didn't trust him, because all of a sudden I was his main supplier, I think, and he kind of worried me. But what I would do is, let's say he would want an 8-ball, and I would sell him an 8-ball, but he'd give me cash for it, and then I would only give him half the 8-ball, and I'd say, I'll give you the other teener later. I don't have it right now. My thinking was that if he was working for the cops, that the cops would give him the money, and they would demand the money. They would demand all of it, and the cops just don't work that way. You can't go back with half the dope. This went on, and then one day he tells me, he says, "Hey, I need some money, and I've got my gold bracelet and gold necklace and my gold ring, and I want you to pawn it for me, and then use the money to buy some meth." I wasn't stupid. Yeah, I figured he's trying to set me up somehow. So I would say, I would text him, and I'd say, "Let me get this straight. You want me to pawn your bracelet and your ring and your necklace? Is that what you're saying?" And that way I had some kind of proof that he was actually having me do that, instead of one day cops showing up at my house saying, we got you going to the pawn shop and you pawn this bracelet and everything else, and it was someone else's, and you know what I mean. I was covering my ass. He answered the text and I said, all right, cool. He met me and he gave me his bracelet, which all his stuff that he was wearing was made from gold nugget. Not 14 karat, not 10 karat. It was gold nugget, 24 karat fucking gold. Like I said, his family was very rich. So, all right, I brought it in there and I got a shitload of money. I bought him some dope and gave it to him. So I knew that was cool. So then the next day, a week later, he calls me up and says, hey, behind my dad's business, big distributorship, behind there is a trailer full of aluminum siding that we no longer use. It's not in our catalog anymore, and I can't scrap it. But I was wondering if you could scrap it for me, and then we'd split the money and we'd buy some dope with it. And I'd say, like, here I am again. A flag goes up. It's like, oh wow, he might be trying to set me up to look like I'm stealing this stuff behind his shops. Once again I texted him and I say, I can't find it. Whereabouts is it behind your shop? What's the name of the street? And just to get something as a text for proof that I wasn't stealing it, which worked out really good again. So he answered the text and I was in the clear, and I went and scrapped it all. It got, I don't know, it was a lot of weight. I might have got $400 or something like that, and then I go buy some meth and we'd split it, and that worked out good. Then one day he calls me up and he says, hey, come on down to the shop, I'm in the office. And it was like a week before Christmas, and I said, all right. I jumped on my bike and I rode over there, and sure as shit, there was this big fancy truck in front of the place, and there was no one else there, just him. And so he let me in, and he's just fucking trashed, he's drunk off his ass, and we're sitting in his office, and I go, where were you at? And he goes, oh, we're at the company party. It's at the Holiday Inn or something like that. And I said, yeah, you sound like you're pretty drunk. Well, I had a few beers or whatever, and he was shit-faced. But he was like fucking worried about something. I go, well, what's going on? He goes, you ain't gonna believe this, but right now at my house, the task force is going through my house. I'm like going, what? What the fuck are you talking about, the task force? I go, why are they going through your house? Well, my son, he goes, he's all drunk. He goes, he must have got into one of my baggies, and he's been awake for 2 days, and my wife was fucking pissed, and she was all worried, and she called the police and told them what's going on, and I'm going, what? Are you fucking kidding me? And I'm here right now? I said, I'm fucking out of here. So then I went home. I'm thinking, well, that's fucking weird. What am I going to do now? So I didn't know what to think of it. So I seen him a few days later, because he called me up. And I said, well, what's going on, man? He goes, yeah, can I stop by? I said, sure. So he stops by, and I go, what the hell was going on the other day? Was there really a task force? He said something like, no, I was just kidding you. I was seeing if you were a snitch or something goofy like that. It didn't make any sense to me, really. Oh, okay, cool. I'll play along. And the reason I was playing along because I knew he had a lot of money and I knew he was stupid as fuck. So I played along, but I just was even more cautious, So one day he calls me up, and we used to, at my new shop, a new garage, my new house, whatever place I was renting, we used to hang in a garage and smoke a lot of meth, and I had this row of lockers, like four school lockers, and that's where I kept my paraphernalia and shit like that. He was kind of trying to use my trick against me. He called me up and say, hey, can you get me 2 8-balls for like $400 or something? And I'd say yeah. All you gotta do is come over. I'll meet you in the garage at my house. He goes, okay, I'll be there in 20 minutes. So I jumped in my car and I cruised like 2 blocks away, and I sat there, and this is really shitty, but my my daughter was there, and she knew Peter, and my daughters thought he was kind of creepy, but they were young. They were like in 9th grade, 8th grade in high school or something, and so I told him to meet me in the garage. So he comes over, and he goes in the garage, and he texts me, but I didn't answer the text. I called my daughter on the phone, and I said, "Hey, is Peter there?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, tell him to call me on the phone. I can't talk right now. I mean, I can't text right now." So then, like a dumbass, he fell for it. He calls me up and says, "Hey, where are you at?" I said, I'm not going to be home for a while, but I said I left some in the locker for you. So he goes, "All right." So he goes in the locker, and there's only a gram there. That's how much he gave me. He gave me, $300 or something, and so he went there, and there's nothing in a text saying I sold him anything. It was all by telephone now. So I knew he was going to take the gram. Of course he was, because he's a fucking fiend, So he takes the gram, and I've got all the money. He takes the gram, and I knew he was going to just go home and smoke it, The next day, I didn't hear from him. So then the next day, I get in my car, and I drive around, and 2 blocks away is the Boys and Girls Club. And there's a hockey rink there, and his 4 boys were into hockey. So I drive by, and it's on a Sunday, and it's like, oh, there's this truck. I fucking go by, and I look in his truck, and his truck is tore apart, like the cops tore it apart or something. I'm like, what the fuck, So I go home, I get on the jail roster, and I look on the jail roster, and guess what? Sure shit, he's in jail. And what are the charges? Felony misappropriation of government funds. So he took the buy money, and he gave it to me, and then he took the little bit amount of dope that I gave him, and he smoked it. So I don't know what he told the cops or whatever, but he had no trace of it from me, because I didn't do a text. I didn't do nothing like that. So then yeah, I kind of got away with it that time. And then he come around, and I just, clammed up and wouldn't budge. And so then after that happened, I eventually paid him back little bit by little bit until, I gave him back a little dope at a time, because I knew he was going to smoke that. So, I didn't tell him I knew anything about the misappropriation of funds. So he must have made a deal with the cops that he'll just pay them back, and he'll keep on going, because they wanted some drug busts in the area. So I gave him back a little bit of dope at a time until we were even. We were caught up, and then I wouldn't sell him anymore. I wouldn't, but I still remained friends. I'd still smoke some with him, because kind of like keep your enemies close. So he'd come by, and I'd smoke with him and shit, find out what's going on, what do you do, what are you up to and shit. So anyways, he said that he met this guy up in Little Falls, and this guy's name was Brian. And I knew who he was talking about. Brian was a cousin of a friend of mine who I've known my whole life. And Brian was a pretty big dealer. He had direct ties to the cartel, and this was the best meth that I've seen since we were making it ourselves. So then Peter tells me that he's going up and buying. He went up there with $500, and Brian gave him some. Then he's supposed to go up 2 days later and get another $500. So I'm going, holy fuck. I don't know Brian that well, or else I would have given him a heads up. But I just figured that he was smart enough to figure out something. So then the second time he went up there, he come back, and he come over. I said, well, come on over and smoke some now with me and shit. So he come over, and I go, what's Brian up to? I think I know his cousin. And he goes, yeah, the second time I went up there, Brian wasn't there, but there was this chick named Vicky there. I'm like, really? I don't know Vicky. That was that, He had, but he had this. He supposedly went up there and bought all this meth, but he was still coming to me to smoke some with me. So I'm like, something don't seem right, So then one day I get a phone call, and it's Brian. I mean, it's Peter. And he goes, He goes, yeah, I was on my way to the bank to meet up with Brian, and right when I got there, there was squad cars there, and they were walking him out in handcuffs. And I'm thinking, holy fuck. For one, why the fuck is he calling me? He's trying to find some kind of a weird alibi with me or something, like trying to throw suspicion away from himself in some weird way. I don't know, but I know he was a fucking snitch. That's all I knew. So all right, Peter, whatever, and so I kind of give him the cold shoulder. Brian got busted, and then a couple months later, two new drug dealers emerge, and one of them's name is Steve, and his girlfriend Vicky, and I remember that name, Vicky. And so then I eventually meet her and Steve, and so I'm talking to her one day, and I'm saying, yeah, so did you know Brian up there in Little Falls? Oh yeah, Brian, yeah, we know Brian. I go, you sold some meth to Peter, didn't you? And that was really stupid of me to say. I mean, I realized later, because she looked at me, and like her face went white, and now she thought I was a snitch, because how would I know that? I was getting to that, but she didn't even give me a chance to explain. So it took a long time, but she eventually trusted me, and like I said, they had the best dope in town. But yeah, that's, if you want to be a drug dealer, you want to sell some meth, I hope this opened up your eyes as to what you can expect, because fuck, I just barely got out of that one. And so leave a like, subscribe, and leave a comment, and we'll talk to you later.